by one other rider, Sandy Cazar, just ahead of the bunch. Let's go back to the action. And there they are. Well, there they were. In fact, as I was telling you that, I think they've just dispatched Sandy Cazar back towards that chase group, because he's once again on his own. He made a huge effort to get up here, Paul, and I think he paid the price rather quickly.
Well, he got almost halfway across. He never quite made the junction with the man on the front end of the bike race, and he was dispatched almost immediately.
So there we are. This is the chaos at the back here now. The boys are just getting drinks out of the car, hoping that they'll go over the top. As we pull back now, we should see, I think, more or less the whole of the peloton. No? Yes, more or less. So they're all coming back together. Still about 3 kilometres to the top, we estimate, because it was about a 4.5 journey away from the town of Zungri to the climb summit itself. Turning out to be a bit longer, I think, than some of these riders did realise, because Gonzalez was right among the early attackers as the climb started. He's still on the front of the bunch, but as you can see, that peloton is generally regrouping. Now, we're not sure as we speak, Bob, where Cipollini is.
I don't think he's reintegrated the front of the bike race just yet, but Pataki was in there. He's having a great Giro so far. Sandy Cazar, to go back for a moment, what you were saying was, caught the breakaway and then went straight past trying to catch the lone rider out in the front, got about halfway across to Quesada and then exploded, went back into the breakaway, and now the whole peloton is almost all back together. So a bit of a yo-yo ride by Sandy Cazar. He's using this Giro d'Italia as preparation for the Tour de France. Français des Jeux automatically selected already. They will be in the Tour later on this summer in July. It's the biggest race for the French, obviously, and Sandy Cazar would love to do well in that bike race eventually, and he's being pipped as a future star of French cycling, and I think this Giro would be very good for him. He'll have a good Giro d'Italia, and he'll come out of it with really good form. He'll have a decent rest before the Tour de France, and I bet you we see him racing quite well during the Tour this year. Also, one thing he'll get used to is the heat, because it's been very hot in the Giro so far.
Well, this has been a long ascent here for the Cresta de Zunguri, Phil, because this man has had a long attempt to try and get himself a few points. He will get himself maximum points as we go over the summit of the climb, but he will not have a big advantage over the main field, who right now are just in sight there. They're coming up pretty rapidly indeed.
He's only just going to make it, but Carlos Garcia breaks the grip of Freddy Gonzalez as he goes under that banner and gets the points. A third category climb today. I'm just trying to see who's second place. It looks as though maybe Weingold, the rider from Gerolstein, are getting second over the line. They're still well spread out down the course. Is that Freddie in green? I'm not too sure from the helicopter whether it is or not. There's the time ticking away. Peloton are all there. It looks as though we might well get a bunch sprint.
Well, Mario Cipollini there, the main field being led across by Julio Perez, who at the moment has been very noticeable at the front end of the main field all the time. Mario Cipollini not in that group right now, but I would say, Bob, not too far off the back, and he's got a very good chance with 35 kilometres to go to get the team organised and get himself back into the peloton.
There's the cycling clubs from the region enjoying the passage of the Giro d'Italia. Now we'll watch out for Mario Cipollini. I'm sure our Italian direction will make sure we pick him up. Ah, there he is on cue. It's still a big gap, but remember, that's on the first rider, not on the peloton. He's about 40 seconds behind the peloton. Surely he'll bridge that. Will it be Cipollini's day? I wonder. We'll find out. We'll take a break.
Every weekend it's the same thing. Someone
Garcia went over the top of the climb in first place, but he didn't pursue. He had a 15-second lone lead over the top. He was being chased by Rolf Scholz of Gerolsteiner, and the man first to him is Vladimir Bileka of the Lambau Credit. And meanwhile, back in the field, by the way, as we continue on this fourth stage, we have seen Mario Cipollini trying to cajole the riders in that chase group to take him back up to the peloton. He hasn't closed the gap yet, though.
He's having a hard time, Mario Cipollini, and I think Bobby's turning into a bit of an Ivan Quaranta when it comes to the climbs in this year's Giro. There's a serious amount of movement coming off the front end of the peloton right now, and again, more Kelme riders coming into the attack. Two more riders from Kelme just bridging across there to a small group which is forming. This is the group of Mario Cipollini here. He's got one or two teammates in there, and if we look up the road there, we'll get a chance to see just how far the main field is. And you know what, Bob? It looks to me as if the main field has actually stopped.
Well, the main field not riding at the moment. They're regrouped now. That should give the following riders a chance to catch in. One thing that they've had trouble with, the Domina Vacante team, is that every time Cipollini gets dropped, the whole of the peloton that he's with expect his team to chase him back on and get a free ride back into the peloton. Cipollini has had enough of that in the Giro so far. He wants the other riders in the the groups that have been dropped to contribute a little bit to the chase back into the peloton. So a little bit of frustration, I think. You're absolutely right. He's turning into a bit of Quaranta himself, and he just cannot climb the hills so far. Pretty mild climb there. He should have been able to stay in the group. Although, to be fair, a lot of riders were dropped, none of whom were helping the Domina Vacanze team get back on. Cipollini a little bit frustrated and asking for help from the rest of the peloton. But it does look like they'll get back on. I think we're going to see a wild and woolly sprint to the finish. All the sprinters will be back in the peloton for the final of this bike race. And now the Domina Vacanze team can do what they're best at, and that's do a huge lead out for Mario Cipollini. 30 kilometers to the finish now, just about 18 miles. And there you can see down into the town where they'll be finishing.
So as we look down at this breakaway, still trying to slip the sprinters on what could be a sprinter's day. This is the result of the Cresta di Zungli. Garcia gets the 3 points. It was Rolf Scholz of Gerolsteiner in second, and Vladimir Bileka getting 1 point in third. Sorry about the odd picture breakup we're getting today. It's our bogey day by the look of it. After 4 days of racing, we've had great pictures so far. 30 kilometers to go, and just saluting the crowd there is Mesa Mesa, the Colombian, on the Formaggio Pinzolo team. But in that breakaway, Carlos de Cruz is another rider now who's joined the breakaway from the Française des Jeux. Scholz and Bileka, who are second and third over the climb, have gone up to Garcia. Bagliani, Fortunato Bagliani, another good climber, he's joined from Paneria, and Strauss has got across as well. Well, there is a respite in the field, and Cipollini, I think, could only have been 40 seconds back on the peloton. He should be closing in.
Closing in pretty rapidly now. In fact, the word went back to send a teammate from the front group to the chasing group with Mario Cipollini to make sure that he makes the junction. He shouldn't have any problem actually reintegrating the peloton today, because they seem to have shut down. Everybody had their hands up. They were looking for bottles. They wanted to make sure that the bags were full for the last 30 kilometers or so, Bob, because it is a moment of pause. You can see the main peloton just there, and Mario Cipollini, I think today will get back on, and the team will have a superb organization in the sprint.
It was a very interesting tactical maneuver we just saw there. The Domina Vacanze team asking one of the domestiques to come out of the front group, go back to the second group where Cipollini is chasing. There he is now in the world champion's jersey, and that rider will now be on the front of the bike race until they get caught up. Something that I enjoyed doing in my career, and I would love to go back for my teammates and bring them back into the front of the bike race. Did that on a few occasions, and then proceeded to get dropped directly myself, but that's all part of the game, and that's why those riders are paid so well to take care of Mario Cipollini, and he's paid so well to win bike races. Let's see if he can get one more. He's only had 2 so far this year. I'm sure he'd love to get another one today.
Well, there's the composition of the 6 men who are trying to slip away here, and 2 riders in this breakaway from Kelmate. As we look at Mario Cipollini, I think he will get back this time, and then he'll start licking.
Cipollini was in and then chased back, and we have now got Mario Cipollini in the main field. But a bit of a problem for him at the moment, because in fact there's a group of 6 riders still off the front, not by very much, around about 30 seconds, but on these roads those guys have got a very good chance of getting themselves organised and in fact surprising the sprinters on a day like this.
Well, that's a very good point. Yesterday's descent off of the climb, not a very hard climb, but a very torturous descent. It was difficult to come back on. It did cause grief to Rick Verbrugge, who is out of the bike race now. Very hard descents, very twisting, lots of switchback turns. It makes it hard to come back on. This road was straight and downhill at the top before they got into these towns and villages by the coast. So Cipollini had a chance to get back in, to make a lot of time in the sprinters group back to the climbers group in the front when it is a long, straight, fast descent. But once you get into the twisty, turny descents, it's much more difficult to close the gaps. And these guys have been able to maintain their advantage, our little breakaway here, just because of how twisty the road is at the bottom of it. Now it seems to have straightened out a little bit, and it'll be a long drag to the finish line. I think we're going to see another big field sprint in the Giro d'Italia. We haven't had a lot, maybe just the first stage to be honest, and so this might be another one.
Well, we're looking at the breakaway here. The only fact is Marcel Strauss sat at the back there as they continue this breakaway. I can give you the names again: Carlos de Cruz, Garcia, Bileka, Bagliani, Marcel Strauss and Gutierrez is the composition, and there they all are for you. Rolf Scholz was here, but he was second over the mountains, and he's dropped back into the field. So there's just those 6 riders still holding off at around about 23 kilometers to go. Well, really, Paul, that's only about just on half an hour racing at these speeds.
It's about half an hour racing. You can see the main field now. I feel that they've got the breakaway in their sights because the gap just 22 seconds. See the teams of the sprinters coming forward. Robbie McEwen's team were there. Mario Cipollini's team, I think, will come forward in a few kilometres time and try and pull those riders back. We're now going onto roads which are much more suited to an organised chase on the front end of the peloton, and the last 5 kilometres would suit today, I think, Mario Cipollini, because they are completely flat. There are only a couple of corners in the run into the finish as well. There's a nice little bend at 2.5 kilometres to go and a sweeping right-hand bend at 500 metres to go. Cipollini right now, there's been an accident on the right-hand side, and it looks that would probably be Robbie McEwen who's had an incident there because his teammate has just passed a wheel across.
Front wheel puncture for McEwen, that's rather sad, as McEwen now gets away quite quickly, and he's still got riders coming by him. So the benefits of having a teammate, and Robbie shouldn't have any trouble getting himself settled back into the peloton. It would have been a different kettle of fish, though, if he had to wait for a team car when they're on these descents. I see they've just altered the results of the King of the Mountains too, Paul. In fact, Marcel Strauss is now being given as the Gerolsteiner rider over the top in second place, which would explain his presence in the break.
Absolutely. This is just a small group tailed off the back. These riders now recovering from having been dropped on that climb. It wasn't that difficult to climb, a third category climb, but it was 10 kilometres of ascent. Right now, these guys are scrambling to get themselves back into the main field, but I think the big news is, Bob, that Mario Cipollini has integrated the main peloton, and he will be looking to try and get himself that 41st win today.
And he'll have to come around Robbie McEwen, whose teammate had a really heads-up wheel change there. Barely got dropped by the peloton before his teammate had actually given up his front wheel to Robbie's. Pretty tricky to do when you're tired at the end of a long, hard bike race in the hot sun. Switch wheels with your team leader. One thing you got to watch out for on the descents, if that rim has gotten so hot from the braking that it is molten. A lot of attacking off the front of the bike race. It looks like Fabio Sacchi there. He's a great little bike racer, consistently strong throughout the year, and he has launched off the front in pursuit of the little breakaway that we have. Not a lot of fireworks from the Saeco team so far, apart from Gilberto Simoni riding up into the top 10 on GC so far.
Well, they don't have too much to worry about because they are currently ranked the #1 team in the world. This is a move here, I think, to take the pressure off the team so they don't have to organise themselves on the front end of the peloton and chase it down. If you can jump across a gap when the gap comes down to 20 or 30 seconds like this, it takes an awful lot of pressure off the team. It is now, I think, Phil, up to Mario Cipollini's team to get themselves onto the front and organise the chase if Cipollini wants to make it number 41.
I'm just looking at Julian Wynn slipping back on the downhill, looking a little bit nervous on the way down. There's the situation. We've got those 6 leaders, followed by Sacchi at 22 seconds. Excuse me, as we watch the peloton from the rear side here now. And the Factor boy's not quite as active now. Lars Bak sitting here at the back, and this is his teammate Julian Wynn coming up towards him. So the race is closing down towards 20 kilometres to go. The breakaway is still clear, but only just. Robbie McEwen back in the peloton. We'll take a break.
Listen up, lug nuts. Pop quick.
Pumping at his heels as we twist through 18 kilometres to go to the finish now. This is the leading group of 6 riders. There are 2 riders here from Kelme, but they're looking to me as though they're getting a little bit restless now, and I'm not so sure they're going to stay away. There's the composition for you. And nobody affecting the destiny at the moment of the overall leadership, so it's not really something that Pataki will chase, but I'm quite sure the sprinters want this group back.
They certainly do, but these are ideal racing roads, aren't they, Bob? They're a little bit difficult. The surface, the pavement is quite rough. It doesn't allow you to roll along at high speed. It eats into the energy in your legs. But looking at the main field there, that was a very long line. We seem to be having a few problems with satellite today. But at the moment, we've still got the 6 riders surviving by not very much more than 20 seconds. And I think when we pull back, we will see that Sacchi is back in the fold. Yeah. But there's a long stretch of riders. Another move coming across here. This is, again, the Sidemek team trying to put someone into orbit.
Which they did yesterday with Stefano Garzelli. Hit the Tenax team, perhaps, it looks like. They have very similar jerseys, and I did make that mistake in the call yesterday. It's Oscar Pozzi, very strong bike racer. One of the classic Italian names in bike racing, Oscar Pozzi. A lot of great Pozzis in the past, and he is a very good bike racer. He's attacked not exactly a flat run into the finish. A lot of climb still to come, and that will really test the legs of Mario Cipollini and the other sprinters. They, I think, will all come back together, but it doesn't. Every time the road goes up, the riders get excited. If they have some good legs, they try to get away. There is a little bit of a breakaway. They'll need to catch them before too long, and they can do a big setup for the sprint. And I think it'll be a straight run into the finish line. There is one corner, about 500 meters to go to the right. Cipollini should have no trouble being able to drag race on the wheel of Lombardy if it all unfolds that way, which it has so many times in the past. Here's Marcel Strauss on the front of the bike race. This is our little breakaway. You can see riders starting to come across to them. Once you get a little bit winded in a breakaway, it really takes the impetus out of it. And people often ask me how they can close down so far, so quickly in a finale of a bike race. But the peloton is charging at such an incredible rate of speed that it's so very difficult to stay out in the front. You need to wait to the last 50 or 100 meters, which Cipollini does so well. Robbie McEwen, Furlan, Pataki, all of our sprinters. They don't have a lot of chances so far. Yesterday, most certainly not one of them. So today, they'll want to get up to the front and try to win a stage. I think Robbie McEwen had a chance himself for a couple of stage wins so far. Squandered one of them by pushing Baldato into the fences, and then I think he squandered another one yesterday by going on a little bit of a breakaway, even though he doesn't have a great chance on those type of finishes.
Well, he actually said that himself, Bob, after the finish. The reason he made that breakaway was because he didn't think that that finish suited him. And when you look at the finishes of Garzelli, Casagrande and people like that being up at the front end of the main field, well, you realise that it probably wasn't a Robbie McEwen finish, but today almost certainly could be. But they do still have to pull back this leading group of 6 riders. They're now getting onto much nicer roads where they can get themselves organised on the front end of the peloton. A lot of riders right now are having their legs absolutely screaming to them, saying, please stop, please turn off the pain, because it is a very difficult run-in right now. They've got around about 7 or 8 kilometres of undulating roads, and then they charge into the outskirts of town, and it is completely flat for the last 5 kilometres, and I think an ideal terrain to get the big train going of zebras thundering on the front end of the peloton.
Well, they've still got to work out how they're going to do this, because they've got that 18 seconds. There's Angelo Furlan, who has been right up in the overall classification after day 1. Good sprint finisher. He'll have a job, though, because the whole field is about to lead him out by the look at it, because he's last man in the peloton. The champion of Norway down there, Kurt Arvesen, former under-23 world champion a few years ago now, and beginning to settle in as a top-time professional bike rider. These are the boys putting their back into it. I've refrained from saying that Strauss on the front was probably thinking this was music to his ears, Bob, but I would think he probably is right now.
That's quite a nice analogy. Strauss, not the composer, but the bike racer. And he's on the front there. He's had a very good breakaway right here. He's ridden very strong, and these riders are putting everything into this break. One thing you don't like to see in a breakaway is a gigantic boulevard like this going straight down to town. They're going to come into the banner with about 15 kilometers to go now. It's very hard for them to stay away, and the peloton can see them just dangling right up the road there. You can swoop down on them just at the right minute. 15 Ks to go. They're dangling at just around 20 seconds, so we'll see if they can stay away. But this is a good, high-powered breakaway, and they've put everything into it.
So 15 kilometres to go. That's about 20 minutes of cycling today as they're heading downhill, although they do finish quite a way up above sea level. The breakaway is 6. He's still making a run for it. We'll be back with all the action.
Is this how you trim your lawn? Or is
Vibo Valentia on stage 4 of the Giro d'Italia, and these 6 riders who got away on the climb and reassembled on the descent are Paul gaining ground. They're now 30 plus seconds ahead.
Well, it is rather strange, and there's just been a rather interesting attack there, because 2 riders have moved clear of the 6, and I think this may well be the end of the main field, because the main field have certainly got themselves organised in anger on the front end. Interesting to note that Fassa Bortolo are not doing anything to try and set up for a win by Pataki. There's Casagrande looking very comfortable. He's starting to look like a serious contender for this year. The leader of the points there, Stefano Garzelli. But I have a feeling, Bob, that the guard of Mario Cipollini are not firing on all cylinders.
Yes, absolutely. They should have closed the gap down to this breakaway a long time ago. Cipollini back into the group. They had the power in the past to really close down gaps. It's been breaking up now. It looks like Gutierrez from the Kelme team on the front of the break, as well as Strauss still dancing on the pedals to a very musical tune of Strauss, and he's surrounded by 2 Kelme riders there. It's not very nice, but it's amazing that they continue to gain time on the peloton. They're just not very well organized in the chase, and it's a very difficult course. I think they're going up a hill here. That's why the breakaway split apart, and that's why the peloton is having such a hard time closing the gap. It was down to about 20 seconds. Now it's gone back over 30 seconds. We're looking at a pretty good chance to stay away, although if the last 10 Ks do flatten out and the speed increases in the peloton, it'll be hard to stay away. There's a couple of our guys that were in the break are now being dropped, and I'm sure they'll be soon swallowed up by a charging peloton that we should see in a few moments coming into our screen from the helicopter. That's another rider from the breakaway. That's the Francais de Joux rider that was in the group, and now he's going to be coming back. Only one rider from Mario Cipollini's Domina Vacanze team on the front of the group. It's hard, even for the peloton, to close a gap like this when these rows are so heavy. We're looking down to riders getting dropped now as we run into town. Really hard.
Well, Mario Cipollini looks pretty cool, looks pretty confident, but his team, for the moment, Phil, have not come to the front and organised the train. They may well be gambling on the front riders actually just being pulled in by the natural attrition that happens. Marco Pantani looking more and more comfortable every day, and it'll be interesting to see if he can show us some of the glory that was his in the mountains when we go up to the northern part of Italy. Pataki's team now sending his men to the front, and maybe he too is thinking about another victory. He reckons that he can keep the pink jersey on his shoulders until we go right the way up to Terminillo. But I tell you what, they better not forget that tomorrow they've got a very difficult stage across the island of Sicily.
Well, that's Carlos de Cruz from the breakaway, just being picked up by the hard-working Fassa Bortolo team here now. And I'm just thinking, you know, that perhaps this isn't quite a routine finish today, because we stay up in the foothills above the end of the toe of Italy, and we don't really come down now, so the undulations will stay with us. It's disrupting the chase quite dramatically, but they shouldn't have split up. I think that's paid the price. We're seeing 14 seconds. They've just been shown 32 seconds, but of course the blackboard man takes a little while to get up there. We're on a satellite readout. We've probably got a more accurate time check here. So we've got Garcia and Gutierrez, the 2 Kelme riders, and Marcel Strauss from Gerolsteiner. They are now the 3 riders versus the rest. There is still a chance they will get swept up, but it's a gamble.
Well, now there is an organisation on the front end of the main field, and in fact it's the team of the pink jersey, Alessandro Patacchi, who've got themselves organised. They're actually playing a pretty sensible game, aren't they, Bob? Because if you look here at the makeup of Fassa Bortolo, they really don't want to do too much work, because let's look at this. So you've got here Frigo and Gonzalez, 2 men who are thinking about winning this bike race at the end of the 3 weeks. Yes, Patacchi is the leader at the moment, but if you try and defend the lead of a man who is going to blow up towards the end, you can actually decimate the team, which you're going to need in the last 3 weeks of racing.
Well, they've saved it to the very last moment in this bike race, just about 10 kilometers to go to put their riders on the front. They might have just enough road to catch this breakaway. Then it'll be every man for himself in a huge sprint. But this breakaway has been very motivated. The 2 Kelme riders, we didn't think Kelme looked so strong this year, but they've really done a great Giro d'Italia, almost winning some stages so far. 2 riders against one of the Gerolsteiner riders, having a good chance to stay away to the finish line. Fassa Bortolo now, a real concerted effort on the front of the peloton with the whole team, plus 1 Domina Vacanze rider, Michele Scarponi there, chasing down the breakaway.
Well, Garzelli's moved up quite high there as well, Phil. Garzelli, the leader of the wearer of the points competition at the moment, he's up into 15th place.
So a long, angry line now. They are organised. There are 3 riders surviving. Here we have them under the 10 kilometres to go. Garcia, Gutierrez for Kelme, Marcel Strauss for Gerolsteiner. We'll have to take a short break. We'll come back. Will we come back for the catch or the escape? We'll know very shortly. See you in a moment. And we're back with the leaders here of the Giro d'Italia. That's the latest time check, 25 seconds. They are hovering like a tantalising set of carrots in front of the donkeys here. 8 kilometres to go. Because of the nature of the course, this could be a tight decision.
It could be a very tight decision, because there's a nice move coming off the front end of the main field here. We're supposedly on the flats right now, and in fact it's the climbers who are throwing caution to the wind, Bob, because there's a good move by Tirolongo and Freddy Gonzalez trying to get across the gap. This is quite remarkable.
Well, this is an incredible profile. I think it's caught all the riders off guard. It's very hilly before the finish. We're inside the last 10 kilometers. Fassa Bortolo was on the top, but they're being blown apart now by a lot of attacks trying to get across to the breakaway of the climbers. there, especially Freddie Gonzalez, trying to get away now. Another Kelme rider maybe trying to close the juncture to his two teammates up the road. Doesn't want to cooperate with these guys. And that was the brother of the rider in the breakaway, Adolfo Quesada there, trying to hold on now to the wheel. He doesn't want to work to get across, but this man most certainly does. And here's Angelo Furlan, one of our sprinters, dropped off the back of this race, having a very hard time staying in the front. I have a feeling it's going to split all apart on this last climb before the finish. It's not even on the profile of the race, and Cipollini having a really hard day. His team doing a lot of work, and it's all falling apart now in the finale of the bike race. And here's the breakaway. The two Kelme riders and the German rider Strauss still in the front.
Well, from the top of this false flat, Phil, there are 5 kilometres to go to the finish. We're about 8 kilometres to go to the finish right now, and it does level off. But there you can see the front end of the main field slowly but surely clawing their way to the 3 counter-attackers. But the 3 men off the front are still managing to survive.
Well, this is quite remarkable at the moment, but those are the 3. They've got them in their sights. Some relentless pacemaking being done here by the Fassa Bortolo riders. And they've done very well indeed now to bring this field back to here. It's been a tough chase here. Dario Frigo himself being brought into the action on the front for his team. They're closing it right down, painfully inching closer and closer together. We're looking here at 103. This is Carlos Garcia. As we can see now, the undulations in the region have hurt 1 or 2 riders. I think Paul... I'm not so sure this is a Cipollini finish anymore.
Well, you know, if you've got a chance of winning a bike race, Mario Cipollini couldn't pull himself inside out. He slipped back down the main field here, but he's not far away right now from cresting this false flat, but he's definitely slipped to the wrong end of the main field if he's thinking about winning this bike race this afternoon.
Well, the thing is that he's got to hope he can hang on. He keeps his tempo on his limit without overdoing it, hoping that there'll be a little respite over the top and he will close down the gap. This is Arvidsson here, hanging on to any wheel that comes his way, because there's an awful lot of fast riding being done at the sharp end of the peloton now. I think they are going to bring those 3 back, and if they do, then there are some of the big riders, and Casagrande must be included in this, who might go looking for the stage win. There is Cipollini, still holding his position at the rear as the race referee takes a good look at him. Chippo doing nothing wrong at all today. Let's just hope he can hold his place and take part in the finishing sprint. There's the front of the group. 1 quick break and we'll be back for all of the action at the finish line. Come back. We're looking down at Mario Cipollini as we approach 5 kilometres to go for the head of the race, led by Dario Frigo. Boy, Mario Cipollini's making this a hard few days to the Tour.
He really is. He's just about 25 seconds off the rear end of the main peloton. He cracked just before the summit of the climb, and I think the impetus is going out of his ability to get onto the main field right now. But obviously, Bob, Fassa Bortolo want to try and set this win up for Pataki. Another 20 seconds and another few days in the pink jersey. That is the Mario Cipollini group, about 25 seconds off the back end of the peloton.
Well, it's amazing to see Fassa Bortolo has put the strongest bike racer in the world at times on the front of this peloton. That's why Cipollini had such a hard time staying in. Dario Frigo doing the tempo now. They must really want to keep that pink jersey. Frigo on the front of the bike race, chasing the peloton, shelled Cipollini just before the finish. They've got 5Ks to go before the line, and they have only a few more kilometers before they can get back into the front and expect Mario to have a chance to do good in the sprint.
Well, I tell you what, Bob, that's rather a strange tactic there as well, because I thought that was Gabriele Colombo who dropped back to look after Mario Cipollini there as well. This is the first time that we're going to actually finish this bike race here in Vibo Valentia, and if that is Gabriele Colombo who's gone back, he was in 4th place in the overall classification this morning. Cipollini is throwing everything he can to try and get himself back into this bike race, Phil.
Well, I'm not sure whether Colombo's back there voluntarily or by the fact his leg's also cracked up, but he wants to get back on, that's for sure, and he's going to have to do it pretty quickly. We're coming up to the 4 kilometres to go now. And here is Mario, and with him there, driving the train, is Gabriele Colombo. 20 seconds, he's closing in. Mario Cipollini, is he in this group? I didn't see him, but maybe he is. As we're seeing other riders going in. Did I say Mario Cipollini? I was thinking Marco Pantani, don't ask me why. A little flight of the brain there. As we look at the world champion. and there's still an outside chance he'll get on. But surely if he gets on, Bob, at 3 kilometres to go, how's he going to get through to the front?
One time in Sicily, I saw him close the gap from the climb to the finish with me on his wheel. Close the gap. We caught the peloton with 500 meters to go, and Cipollini swept around. I got last in the break, but he actually won the stage, so he could do it. I've seen him do it before, but it's an absolutely desperate day. Saeco now in the front of the peloton with the Kelme rider. It's just an incredible phenomenon. And there you can see Pataki in the pink jersey, tucked in right at the front of the bike race. Could get another stage today if Cipollini doesn't catch up. But if he does catch up, I guarantee you he's going to be all fired up for the sprint, and he could have a chance to win. 3Ks to go. They're only about 15 seconds behind. Let's see if he can do it, but they're really moving now at the front of the bike race.
He can't possibly get on, even though he's got Alberto Ongarato with him there, who's his strong man at the early parts and the chases. 3 kilometres to go now, and the riders are whipping up the pace. On the telephone there, was he? That's Gilberto Simoni, also riding hard at the front, because the gaps are, they're not worried about the rise behind, but they are thinking of the small time bonuses. It could mean a change at the front. Don't forget, if Garzelli were to win today, then he would close the gap down even more, and he might well take the race lead. But I think Pataki is going to make the most of these days. He's a good bunch sprinter. When Cipollini's not present, and we're looking for Robbie McEwen right in the centre of our screen there, Robbie could be the man to spoil the party for the Italians.
Well, he's got a bit of revenge to take over the judges. He doesn't feel as if he deviated from his line on that sprint just a couple of days ago ahead of Fabio Baldato, and he's the kind of rider who would like to try and get himself up there for the win today. He's a little way back for the moment as we go through 2 kilometres to go. Mario Cipollini will not get back and will not win the stage. I would have to say that is almost certain right now. Frigo is on the front, absolutely hammering along. Pataki is in an ideal situation in 5th or 6th place here, but look at this, Cipollini still will not give up.
He's not given up yet. They're going through that with 19 seconds behind the group. It's only 2 kilometers to go, so I don't think that he can, if he does close the gap, have a chance to come around. And it looks like he's just given up there, looking down at the ground. Can't believe his bad luck. He just can't get over those climbs, even the moderate ones. So now it's a chance for Robbie McEwen especially. He's right in there. He's got some teammates with him. Let's see if he can match the accelerations of Pataki in the sprint.
Well, Rodriguez here from Kelme driving on. But I have to say that this isn't the Cipollini of a year ago even. He's just missed out on 3 days now, being tailed off in the final miles on the only undulations of the day. And he quite clearly isn't quite on form. But you know, in a long stage race, you can ride yourself into that form. Here we go. 900 metres from the line now. Watch out for the man in pink to try and increase his overall lead. And watch out for the little man wearing 131, Robbie McEwen, to see if he can do something about it now. Because McEwen isn't going to allow a chance like this to go unwanted. As they start to dismix it, Pataki again is holding himself in a very nice position there as the lead out is coming, and he's got himself round that corner in 5th or 6th place. Didn't catch a glimpse though of Robbie McEwen, but McEwen won't show himself till the last minute, and he has a real habit of hiding in the sprint finish now. Magnus Backstedt of Sweden is also trying to get in on the far left of our picture. He is a good sprint finisher, only Swede ever to win a stage of the Tour de France, but he's running out a little bit now. And also Jimmy Casper trying to come, but here comes Pataki now. This could be a win for the man in pink. The pink jersey being challenged by McEwen on the line, a final kick on the line, and that's it. Revenge is sweet. McEwen takes him on the line.
But Robbie McEwen was a long way back there. He fought his way right through the middle of the main field, Phil, and he certainly was looking for that win. Let's have a look at that. The lunge to the line gives it to the inside. Pataki will get himself a few more seconds there in 2nd place, and Jimmy Casper, I think it is, of the Française de Jeu, will come across the line there for 3rd. Mario Cipollini not in the picture at all, never managed to get himself back into the main field. Pataki looked like he'd got that, but I think a little bit of anger coming into the pedalling strokes there of Robbie McEwen.
Well, he tried yesterday to break away. He was so upset with everybody after being D-class 2 days ago. But no doubt about that one, Bob. You can't accuse him of doing anything wrong there, can we?
No, absolutely beautiful sprint by McEwen and a really hard acceleration for the line. Just coming over a flying Pataki. His team did a great lead out for him and he couldn't quite do it, but I think McEwen wanting the revenge and his legs carrying him through there. Great sprint finish all the way straight to the line. No discussion about that win at all for Robbie McEwen.
So it was McEwen first. Pataki ever consisted in 2nd place, and in 3rd place they're saying it is Bernhard Eisel, the Austrian rider on that team of Française de Jeu, and he comes up on the left there. So a great win by 25 kilometres long, and that is going to hurt Well, at least Mario Cipollini, it seems. It'll probably hurt most of the sprinters. It could be a very good day of action. Don't forget, it's stage 5 and it's live with you tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 6:30 a.m. on the West Coast. We have our prime time also tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific timings. Looking down now on the first time finishing town here, we had a brief look at the result there. I can confirm, though, that Pataki is leading this race. Garzelli has dropped back a bit to 29 seconds. He's opened up the gap because of the time bonus for getting second place in the sprint. A great result, though, for Robbie.
Absolutely superb. I think he was chasing that one. He obviously had a little mechanical incident about 10 kilometres out. The team did not panic at all, swiftly swapped front wheels, got him back into the pack. The man who had the hard time today was Mario Cipollini, and I wonder if, Phil, at the end of this Giro d'Italia, he is going to equal the record of Alfredo Binda, because he's not looking great.
It's going to be tough for him, Bob. He's not going to score too well tomorrow, I don't think.
Category 1 climb halfway through the bike race tomorrow. He hasn't even been able to go over an freeway overpass yet and stay in the group, so I'm sure he'll lose a lot of time. He does have a long ways to the finish to catch up. We've seen the big field sprinters come back to the front of the Giro d'Italia. If there is a lull in the action after the descent of the Category 1, he might have a chance. If, however, they race like they did today, forget about it. He'll never catch up.
There's the line. As we saw it, McEwen just getting over Pataki. Bernard Eisel becoming the sprinter on Française des Jeux instead of Jimmy Casper. He got third place. Giovanni Lombardi always gets in the frame if his teammate Cipollini doesn't bother to come to the finish. He got fourth. And Magnus Bagstedt coming back to his old form, Magnus, on the days when he used to race with Credit Agricole, because he's also well up there today, so good for him. Don't forget to come and visit us on our website, and we have little articles there every day and all information. That's on olntv.com, and tomorrow night, don't forget, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, you can come into the chat room and have a chat with Paul, Bob and myself. Mario Cipollini sprinting well in our pictures, but not as it happens when we give you our live coverage of the Giro d'Italia. It will continue tomorrow. Enjoy it with us. I know that we're enjoying this race now as it begins to develop. It's almost the first week gone. I can't believe it. Anyway, we'll see you tomorrow morning, 9:30 live. Don't forget the re-air at 8 o'clock tonight in prime time. For Bob Roll, Paul Sherwen, I'm Phil Liggett saying, we'll see you. Goodbye. To watch from afar as the field contested a mass sprint with the race leader Alessandro Pataki right to the fore. It was not to be his win, though, as the Australian Robbie McEwen snatched it on the line, making just amends for being declassed 2 days ago. Overall, though, it was a fourth day in pink for Pataki as the race now moves on to the island of Sicily, and that's next on OLN. And we're on a day ticket to Sicily today, the fifth stage of the Giro d'Italia. The riders setting off at 7 o'clock this morning from the mainland and heading on to the island of Sicily, ready for a big race around the island. Hello again, everybody. I'm Phil Liggett, and welcome back to our coverage of the Giro, joined, of course, by Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll. Well, yesterday we saw the sprinters again in action, and believe me, Robbie McEwen suffered on the road yesterday, but at the end it all proved worthwhile for him, Paul.
Yeah, it did. In fact, he did suffer, Phil, because he actually said that was one of the most difficult wins that he's ever had. It brings his race-winning total to 98, which is absolutely superb, and I think he's a man who could win a couple more stages. He really dug deep yesterday to try and get himself over Alessandro Pataki in the final few metres, and I think just a little bit of anger helping those legs go over in the final metres to get himself that stage victory. I think he will be looking for another win today, Phil, because it all depends on how the riders approach that first category climb. The sprinters will be hoping that it isn't that fast.
It's a very tough climb coming up, Bob. It's something like 25 kilometres, about 15 miles to climb today, and we're quite high up. Bob, we're thinking of two men for you. Freddy Gonzalez, so far the race-long leader in the King of the Mountains. And what about Francesco Casagrande? Very consistent.
Well, Freddy Gonzalez has done a great job for the Columbia Sellitalia team, winning the first two KOMs that they offered and getting third in the next one. So he has a commanding lead in the King of the Mountain competition, and I think that's a jersey that his his team and his teammates will continue to defend throughout the Giro d'Italia. They don't have a lot of GC aspirations, but they can do good in the King of the Mountain competition. Another rider that's been very cool so far in the Giro, he's just there all the time in the right spot, is Francesco Casagrande. He is a great climber. He has huge GC ambitions because the Lamprey team has not been selected for the Tour de France. I'm 99% sure about that they won't get the nod for the Tour. So they're putting everything into the Giro d'Italia, and Casagrande is riding great so far.
Well, we mustn't forget, of course, that last year Francesco Casagrande practiced his boxing skills and was disqualified from the Tour, of course. All right, well, let's remind ourselves as to who is leading this race. It is, of course, the Stage 1 winner still, looking for a 5th day in the Maglia Rosa, Alessandro Patacchi. All smiles again on the podium yesterday, getting used to spraying the champagne at the photographers now and enjoying life at the top. And even Gilberto Simoni, the big favourite, has congratulated him on the way he is riding this Tour. There's the situation this morning. Stefano Garzelli, also a stage winner on Stage 3. He's there, 29 seconds back. Ever consistent Casagrande lying in 4th. Gaspare on Cipollini's team, no, on the Donardi team, I beg your pardon, was in 4th there. Race favourite Simoni lying in 6th place, and looking down the list there, Aito Gonzalez came up yesterday from 11th back into the top 10, 51 seconds off. Of the notables, Pantani, very much in our pictures every day, is 16th. Frigo was there yesterday too in 22nd. Calcioli, who was 3rd last year, he is in 40th place overall, and I still think riding pretty well. Paul, an interesting route today and one big climb which we're going to see in the middle.
Certainly, it's actually a very long day for the bike riders today because they actually left the mainland at 7:30 this morning to pop across here to Sicily, where they'll face a 174-kilometre stage from Messina down to Catania, and there is a huge first category climb slap bang in the middle.
And welcome now to these live pictures. Thanks, Paul. I see you've got it down as 174 kilometres. It was officially listed as 169. I've also seen from the Giro organiser they're saying it's 180 kilometres today. And Charlie Wagelish, who's riding the race, thinks it's 174. It is amazing. We're sticking at 176, and the riders are sticking very much together. They're on the climb here now of the Potea Madrazzi, and they're about 5 or 6 kilometres from the summit, and it's beginning to get a little bit steeper. There's an interesting fact for you. 169 at the start. We've only lost 2 riders, both with injuries, sadly, on the way around the route, and 16 of the 19 teams still ride with a complement of 9 riders. Well, this has been, to say the least, a very steady start to the day, because they've been doing only 30 kilometres an hour, and even less now they're on the climb, and Mario Cipollini is right on the front line alongside Alessandro Patacchi. So although the climb is some 15 miles long and takes us up to 3,700 feet, they are riding at what we call very much tempo. Nobody dropped off the back, although I think as the road begins to kick now towards the summit, they will start to split up. There's Arvesen, the champion of Norway, just passing through our screen. Anyway, as the riders are now underway and well established with you, we'll take a break and we'll come back for the battle for the summit. We'll see you very shortly, and I'm sure we'll see Freddy Gonzalez in the thick of the mix as well.
Sì, ma secondo me il Giro d'Italia è soprattutto tradizione.
Il Giro non è niente senza tradizione.
La tradizione sì, d'accordo, ma anche la corsa è grande.
And welcome back. We're on the climb now of the Potea Madrazzi climb, and I can tell you've missed nothing, because the riders here are cruising up this climb. The average speed has plummeted now to 29.7 kilometres an hour overall for the day of racing, and as you can see, Mario Cipollini down there in the second line has been keeping an eye on everybody. So too has Patacchi. They haven't attacked this climb at all. The weather conditions, though, can't be used as an excuse. It's perfect today, fairly warm at 77, but great humidity and nice wind coming out of the northeast, which is basically cross to tail. So the riders here, not preoccupied with the trips to the car, Paul, but really they're holding this together.
They're holding it very much together, but after all, this is not that difficult a climb it is. It looks on paper to be a hard climb because it's about 25 kilometers of ascension. They climb up to a maximum altitude of 3,691 feet. But I think the important thing is the gradient is not so much, it's 4%, and of course putting on top of that the fact that distance from the finish is 80 kilometers. That's 2 hours of racing. I think a lot of riders realize that even if they were to break free over the summit, they would almost certainly get pulled back towards the end, and that is a big thing as well, compounded with the fact that the riders face a very long day today. Many of them getting up about 6 o'clock this morning for the transfer across to the island of Sicily. Then immediately after the race at about 6 o'clock in the evening they will catch a plane from Catania all the way up to Naples for the next day's rest day, then to start racing again. So I think everyone, Bob, quite happy to have a little bit of a piano session.
Also, the Giro so far has been very fast, very hot weather as well. 4 stages of that tempo and heat have taken a little bit of the impetus out of the riders' legs. So I think the sprinters started with the cry of piano for everyone to slow down, take it easy, please, let's go at a reasonable tempo because my legs are killing me. So that's the literal translation in Italian, piano, and it means to please take it easy just for a little while.
Well, that's in fact a word that you and I learned very early on in our careers, because I tell you one thing, when we got to some of these big mountain passes, we very quickly learned to shout piano to try and slow them down, but it didn't always work.
Well, we're looking at the pictures. Sorry, we occasionally lose shots here. It's a satellite problem which we're trying to sort out from Italy. And we're looking at the peloton, still climbing steady. They're beginning to look a little bit agitated now as we come towards 2 kilometers to go to the summit of the climb. They've got rid of the hill largely by just riding it at a nice steady pace. Cipollini was seen occasionally talking to all of the riders, trying to back them off and saying, hey fellas, don't get rid of me too early today, it's a long way to ride to the finish. There is a little hill as we run down towards the finish, so it's not entirely an easy ride for the sprinters, but I think with the rest day coming up tomorrow, Cipollini is going to fight to hold in. There does seem to me to be a little bit of disruption in Cipollini's team, Paul, and not as coordinated as we've seen them in the past.
They certainly are, and the big problem is that on certain occasions Mario Cipollini has obviously this year not shown the form he had last year. He's expected his team to go back en masse to pace him back into the main field, as we'd seen in the past the team of Ivan Quaranta doing. But in fact Cipollini admitted himself in the press this morning that yes, okay, the team should have waited for him, but he doesn't really think that he could have got the stage victory. But right now I think Bob, looking down on number 51 there, he is looking a little bit more relaxed as he gets into this Giro.
Much more relaxed today, and he's very happy that they're making a reasonable ascension of this climb here. The first big mountain of the Giro d'Italia, Category 1. I think we'll see some attacking here pretty soon from Freddy Gonzalez of the Cell Italia Columbia team, especially try to get some more King of the Mountain points over the top. Then there'll be a regroupment on the descent, and I think we're in for a rip-roaring sprint to the finish in Catania today. It's going to be a great stage. We did see a couple of Lamprey riders there on the side of the road. Might be Francesco Casagrande having a problem with his bicycle there, and now he's being paced back up into the peloton by his teammate. It's the type of situation that Mariano Piccoli, who was our first abandon of the Tour of Italy, and some more of his teammates coming back just to make sure that Casagrande gets back into the bike race in due order. He's back there. I think he might have changed the wheel. Nothing to worry about too much, especially at this easy tempo.
Simone Bertoletti was the rider helping Francesco there, back into the pack. And we're looking towards the rear of the race here now with Guglielmo Bongiorno. It's a good name if he was Italian, but in fact he's Argentinian.
Buongiorno in Argentina means a big slab of juicy beef, but in Italy it means good day. Either way, he's a winner in my books. That's a great name. Buongiorno.
Well, Paul, I just learned something.
That Bob, you know, I don't know where he digs it all up. That's why he stays up so late at night looking for the nice little stories like that. I tell you one thing though, Bob, it is a bit difficult for a man like Francesco Casagrande to have an incident on the final kilometres of a climb like this, because you've got to make your way through the whole of the main field to try and reintegrate the first 10 or 15 places. But as you can see there right at the front, Ruben Marin is riding very much alongside his teammate Freddy Gonzalez in the green King of the Mountains jersey, and a different colour jerseys are appearing at the front now. Kelme may well be thinking of something like an attack over the summit, because there's a pretty nice descent off this mountain, I think you recall, Bob.
Yes, I did this race a number of times. We used to begin the season every year with the Tour of Sicily. Always a beautiful race. I loved coming to Sicily. The food is so good, scenery so beautiful, that it's a great place to race bikes. I do recall, however, that we went quite a bit faster than this over the climb, or maybe I was just out of shape and suffering.
But you know, this is the thing, whereas the Giro d'Italia has its long days, as you say, Bob, of riding piano like this. Those days are now history in a race like the Tour de France. You never get a day like this anymore.
Well, I actually spoke to one of the riders last night, Charlie Wagelius, who rides for the Formaggio Pinzolo team, and he was telling me, Phil, that in fact he was quite surprised at the difference between the Giro and, of course, the Vuelta a España, where they go through kilometre zero, and in fact they put the hammer down almost immediately, and they're straight up to 60 kilometres an hour. And this year, the Giro d'Italia, to me, has seemed to be a little bit like the Giro d'Italia of old, which has long piano sessions, and then they go really fast on the last 20-30 kilometres into the finish.
In the mid-'80s and the late '80s, even when Giuseppe Saroni and Francesco Moser were the big stars of Italian cycling, they didn't really like the mountains that much, so a lot of the Giros that featured in those years were quite flat, and the riders, knowing that there was nothing to be won on GC, would do long sections of very easy bike riding, and it gave Tour de France contenders a chance to get really good form, and the Giro became a preparation race for the Tour. That is a thing of the past now, and all three Grand Tours are very tough indeed, and especially the Giro d'Italia to begin with. We don't see a lot of the Tour contenders anymore during the Giro.
Well, we're looking here at Marin on the front now, beginning to soften up the race leadership here, because right behind him is Freddy Gonzalez. Let's just have a look at the situation in the King of the Mountains for you. Gonzalez has won 2 out of 3 of the climbs so far, so he's got a 5-point buffer over yesterday's mountain winner, Carlos Garcia, and the rest of the riders just behind there. But it's only a second category climb. Now, the initial information has always come out as first category. It's been downgraded in effect, and I don't blame them, because it wasn't a very good climb anyway, was it? As we're now seeing little Freddy make the best of it now and shoot clear to snatch the points and increase his lead in this mountain competition. It reminds me of 1 or 2 early days in the Tour de France when the non-climbers have scored well, but this man, of course, is a great climber, but he's making the most of what is the easier days in this year's Giro d'Italia. He's got full points there, Bob.
Yeah, that was a great effort. He was well led out by Ruben Marin, his teammate. And you see a little bit of break up in the peloton there. Of course, once the climbers start sprinting on a climb, the sprinters are straight out to the middle of the pack. I think it will all regroup on the descent there. Freddy Gonzalez just getting some more King of the Mountain points. He's going to have a huge lead at the end of the day in that competition.
Very routine, that, Paul. Freddy Gonzalez just doing enough. Marin was the lead out man, and then Freddy taking over the sprint for the line. This is the rest of the peloton in no hurry. They know that on the way down there's a furlong descent off this mountain as well. Everybody will come back together, and it is beginning to look as though Mario Cipollini might well have his best shot of winning a stage since this tour began, as well, at least since he was finishing second on the first stage to Alessandro Patacchi. But Patacchi still finishing very, very well indeed, with constant placings in the top 3. Okay, there's the leader in the King of the Mountains. Now we'll take our break.
Totally Gone Native.
Kick it!
You won't want to miss this one as we bring you the Tour de Romandie and American Tyler Hamilton's spectacular win there. That's this Thursday at 8 p.m. only on OLN. Well, welcome back to the Giro d'Italia. We didn't want you to miss any of the climb, so we recorded those pictures. We're rejoining the action now with 48 kilometres to ride. Now, we saw over the top of the climb there, Freddy Gonzalez, the King of the Mountains leader, has increased his lead. Laverdi was second over, and Nocentini was over in third. They're 2 riders on the Formaggio Pinzolo team. They fell back. Gonzalez went on, and the 4th man over the climb, Ignacio Gutierrez, decided to go with him. So there we are, 2 riders now in the lead. Just on 48 kilometres to ride, Paul, and the last check we got was around 2 minutes 50 seconds, and they're saying now it's 3 minutes.
It's just increased to 3 minutes in the last few moments. An interesting move by these 2 guys. They're basically 2 climbers. We didn't expect Freddy Gonzalez to go out on the attack. He actually just covered the move, which was initiated by Ignacio Gutierrez. And Bob, I have a feeling that as we get closer to the finish, the big teams of the sprinters today will wind it up to an unbelievable speed, and these 2 men will almost certainly get caught.
Well, they'll be swept up, I'm sure, before the finish. The peloton knowing exactly how much time they'll have throughout the finale of the bike race. You can see they're already starting to get organized on the front here. A couple of the Francais de Joux riders have come forward. to help out the Domina Vacanze team, they have a fast sprinter in Jimmy Caspers as well. He's been getting closer and closer in the finishes, and we'll see how the sprint unfolds. For the two breakaway riders, Freddie Gonzalez is the last guy in the peloton you want to be in a breakaway with, especially if you're a little bit lanky and tally like Ignacio Gutierrez is. Freddie Gonzalez is a very diminutive little climber. There's almost no draft when you sit on his wheel, so it's almost like doing your own time trial. Every once in a while, the rider behind pulls through, but you can't get any draft on it, so it makes for a difficult breakaway situation. It's always better when the riders are well matched physically and size-wise. Here's the peloton starting to speed up. It's a natural inclination of the peloton to get a little bit faster as the race comes towards the finish. All the sprinters realizing they have a chance in Pataki, McEwen, Cipollini. They'll all want to be up there in the front, and Angelo Furlan. So we'll see what's going on in the sprint.
Well, you mentioned Mario Cipollini there, Bob. He is the man, of course, who's still looking for that stage win. He's won 40 stages, 4 times the points, and he's worn the pink jersey. Is time running out? Well, let's ask Paul Sherwen as he looks at Mario Cipollini, the Lion King.
12 months ago, Cipollini was the man. He was ticking off stage wins with the regularity of a metronome. His 6 stage wins in 2002 nurtured the hopes that he could easily equal and pass the 59-year-old record of Alfredo Binda, with 41 career stage wins. It was supposed to be even sweeter to the master showman, as he could do that with the world champion jersey on his shoulders. But 12 months seem to have changed things for Super Mario. The hills that he once glided over have now become mountains, and his herd of zebra-clad domestiques seem to have lost a bit of their spark. It may be that the rainbow jersey has once again unleashed its curse and is lying heavy on Chippo's shoulders. Let's hope that the self-proclaimed fastest man in the world on a bike can get it all together and at least equal the record before the mountains get too high.
Well, Mario has admitted his form isn't as good as previous years. In fact, he said today he's getting too old. But we're all hoping that perhaps he will equal that record. A magnificent achievement, and one I would think would stand forever, because I can't imagine anybody ever winning 41 stages in the Giro, and he's got the chance to make it outright at 42. Well, I think Paul is setting this day up as his best shot so far.
Well, he might know something that we don't know, because he actually admitted a couple of days ago, Phil, that he thought this was the stage that he could win. The team, I think, today will rally around him. There have been a few problems, but sometimes it takes a little bit of a few kilometres to get a team under your belt and organised, and today may well be the day that Cipollini's team gets themselves completely together. And it is, Bob, isn't it, today a superb finish for Mario Cipollini, because the last 1.5 kilometres are almost completely straight, and that'll give Cipollini the chance to get that huge big gear going.
That'll give him a chance to wind up the big 53.11 that he uses to sprint in usually, even sometimes using a 54.11, a monstrous gear. Once he hits about 70 kilometers an hour on a straightaway, which we have in the finale today, it's almost impossible for the pure sprinters to accelerate beyond that. He's going so fast, it's hard for anybody to come around. And once you stick your nose out into the wind at 70 kilometers an hour, something like putting the brakes on happens, and it's very hard to come around Cipollini when he's got a full head of steam going towards the finish line.
Well, we're looking at the 2 leaders here, just dipping inside that 3-minute target, back to 2:50 again. They're Freddie Gonzalez, the leader in the King of the Mountains, and Ignacio Gutierrez of Kelme. As we look out here from this lovely island here of Sicily, across the blue waters there, and they're in tandem. I, for the like of me, can't think why they've gone so far out, because I can't think they've got a hope.
Well, in fact, Freddie Gonzalez just followed the move. The move, as I said earlier, was initiated by Gutierrez, and I wonder if he's now kind of regretting the fact, Phil, that he's in this 2-man breakaway. He's a small man, expected to ride well in the mountains, and on a breakaway like this, in the early part of the Giro d'Italia, you are going to lose and leave an awful lot of energy on the roads of the bike race.
So, as we look down here on the riders, there's still around about 44 kilometres to run, and they've got 2.5, 2 3/4 minutes lead. Mario Cipollini won't like that. We'll take a short break. And welcome back. We're looking here at Tassato, who's still injured after his training crash just before the Giro d'Italia started. As we look now, 42 kilometres still to ride to the finish today. We are riding down the eastern seaboard of the beautiful island here of Sicily. 2:35, the chase is on. The Fassa Bortolo are driving the train. The 2 leaders are Freddie Gonzalez, the leader of the King of the Mountains, former winner of that competition a couple of years ago, and Ignacio Gutierrez of the Kelme. Getting clear clear after the only climb of the day, which was the climb of the Portella Mandrazzi, and Gonzalez, the winner there, joining up with Gutierrez on the way down.
Well, the chances, I think, are being reduced pretty dramatically of succeeding right now because there are several teams moving to the front of the main field. I think the team of Jimmy Casper, Française de Jeu, feel that they've got a good chance. But after all, let's not forget their man Bernard Eisel has actually been riding very well in the sprints over the last couple of days. I can see one or two riders from Lotto Domo who've moved to the front. Of course, there's bound to be one or two men in there from Mario Cipollini's team and the team of the leader, Alessandro Patacchi, who, with his sprinting ability so far, Phil, is actually extending his lead in the overall classification.
Well, it's nice moving here, but I'm still mystified by this. Sometimes, though, Bob, it's a jerk reaction, isn't it? You see the gap and you have a go, and this is the result.
I think that Gutierrez actually had a plan in mind to attack on the descent, and Freddie Gonzalez just happened to be there after the King of the Mountain sprint. So they got together, went down the descent with a lot of tempo, got a little bit of gap as the peloton regrouped. Now that they're back towards the coast of the beautiful Mediterranean Sea there, Sicily, a beautiful place, that they just took that opportunity to go out on a little bit of a breakaway. They have a good time gap, 2.5 minutes, and it hasn't come down that quickly, even though there's 3 teams on the front of the peloton right now. Fossa Bortolo for Patacchi, Lotto for McEwen, and Domino Vacanze for Mario Cipollini.
Well, we're circumnavigating at the moment Mount Etna, and I wonder if any of these guys today, Bob, have got a chance to see Mount Etna in the horizon, because if the skies do clear, it really is quite a magnificent mountain to see, and I hope we get a chance to view it later on. Cipollini, though, riding very comfortable at the front end of the main field. I would think Mario Cipollini today will be giving it everything to try and get himself that win.
Yes, absolutely. He realizes this is one of his best chances so far in the Giro, and I'm sure that it has been upsetting to him throughout the Giro not to win. And you can see Mount Etna rising up in the background there. There's usually a lot of snow on the top. Also, it's one of the few active volcanoes in Europe still, and you oftentimes see puffs of smoke coming out, and it has erupted on a regular basis over the last 4,000 or 5,000 years since people started to inhabit this beautiful part of the world.
Well, actually, an eruption combined with an earthquake back in 1908 actually destroyed the town of Messina, but since then it has redeveloped and become known as the gateway to Sicily. Things at the front end of the main field, Phil, coming under complete control of the teams of the sprinters, and I would think there'll be a couple of attackers at the end of the day with slightly sore legs.
I was just thinking the team car driver down there, Paul, got himself in a little embarrassing situation. There we are, 40 kilometres to go.
Would fall around on the ground like they had just been run over every time they got hit, and they were trying to get a penalty. I realize now that it's a part of the strategy of the sport, but at the time I was like, get up, guys, because in a bike race, if you rolled around like that, no one would care. You'd still be full of cuts, and you wouldn't catch the group. So I always hated that. I hated when the football players, the soccer guys, would roll around on the ground like somebody had just...
It's like when they play a cup final, Bob. They always roll their socks down because they're getting cramp after 90 minutes and they've got to play an extra time of 30 minutes. They should come out and watch some of these bike riders.
Absolutely.
Not that we're denying the skills of what is a very different sport, but this really is ranking as one of the hardest sports in the world. And we're looking at the 2 men trying to take the race today. Still out in front. They're now only 3 kilometres, these 2 riders, in fact, from the Intergiro sprint. I think they'll be sharing the bonuses at the Intergiro today. There, the boys in orange for Nasdux, who is the leader. There's still plenty of points score for the next 2 riders or 3 riders over the line in that competition. There's a time bonus for the man who will finish 3rd in that sprint. So he'll be taking much of an interest in that because he's being chased in that competition by DiBiase, who's only a couple of seconds behind him.
Well, DiBiase will take a serious interest. It's important for him, even if it's only for 3rd position right now, because that's a competition that goes over the whole length of the Giro d'Italia. Interesting to see that Marco Pantani is riding very high in the overall classification, and looking down the results yesterday, Bob, he actually finished himself well up in the sprint. I wonder if he will have some of the glory days when we get up to the big mountains. It may well be a farewell this year for Marco Pantani to the Giro d'Italia, but right now he's done everything right.
He's had a great Giro so far. A little bit of questionable tactics there employed when Cipollini was just off the back and he put his riders on the front to prevent him from coming back into the front and contesting the sprint. That was the first rider across the line was Robbie McEwen, but he was relegated, and Fabio Baldato for the Alessio team was given the victory. Take a little bit of pressure off of that team to get results, but I'm sure Angelo Furlan, the up-and-coming sprinter of Italian cycling, would love to get a big result today. Riders are really racing hard for these other jerseys besides besides the pink jersey, you can see them going crazy for the Inter Giro every day and the King of the Mountain. Very prestigious. It's a great moment in your career when you put on the jersey as a leader of one of the competitions in the Grand Tours, the Giro, the Tour, and the Vuelta.
Well, the speed, Phil, really is hotting up right now, because a few moments ago, in fact about 10 or 12 kilometres ago, we were looking at an advantage for these guys of 3 minutes. It's now come down to 1 minute and 28 seconds. It seems as if the spark has gone out of Freddy Gonzalez pedalling action here. He's not a big, strong man to ride well on the flat roads. He's much better suited to the big mountains that we will go to when we get to the top of the leg of Italy, when we go into the Dolomites and the Alps. Ignacio Gutierrez, on the other hand, is riding fairly well on the flat here. He's been a professional for 4 years, and he's never really been a great winner. I think he only has one victory to his credit, and maybe this, Phil, is a future winner of the Giro we're looking at.
Well, there's an interesting spectator in the right costume for the day as well, and probably looking for Mr. Pataki. Well, he's in the peloton at the moment, as now the CC Polsat boys, the first ever Polish team to take part in one of the big 3 tours, drive at the front now, but they're hunting for only 3rd place. We'll take a very short break and we will come back for the sprint. Don't go away. 25 miles still to race, 2:35 the last time check, and the peloton have got all the teams and the sprinters now driving on. It could be a day for them, but this rider here, Freddy Gonzalez, is having a faultless start. He's quite clearly come to the Tour to win the King of the Mountains, and he's claimed 3 of the 4 climbs so far, so he's building himself up very steadily, a nice lead. And this island is only seeing 1 day of the race. As soon as this race is over, it's down to the airport for the boys. 2 chartered aeroplanes will fly them across to the mainland. They'll land at Naples, and then they'll go to the hotels for a day off tomorrow, when they can just go training instead of racing.
Well, a day off is always something that bike riders don't look forward to, because basically you still have to go through the motions as if your body is in the bike race, don't you, Bob? It's still a very long and usually quite boring day, especially so early into the Giro.
You do have to go out for a bike ride, because the following day your legs would be so locked up and full of lactic acid you couldn't even get out of bed. So if the riders don't actually have a day off, it's kind of like the postman that goes for a walk on his day off, I think.
Well, one man who doesn't have a day off, of course, is our producer Jeff Macaluso, and he's celebrating his birthday working today, Bob.
Unbelievable. Slave drivers on TV. And when the race is on, we have to be there to cover it. There's no rest for the wicked, and we must have been very bad indeed in our former lives.
Oh, well, there we go. This is now, and the CC Polsat boys are also beginning to drive, because they're keeping their leader in the Inter Giro competition, Nasdux, and he is still the leader, and we are about 10 kilometres away from the Inter Giro sprint at Chiari. Now, they're going to have to work pretty hard to close a gap of 2 minutes 23, but clearly they might be thinking of doing that.
I think they feel they've got a great chance, but if I was the team manager of Freddy Gonzalez, who so far, Phil, let's not forget, has been completely unbeaten in every assault he's made at the top of every mountain, I would actually tell him to sit back, hold back a little bit, because almost certainly these men are going to get caught, and as I said earlier, he will have lost an awful lot of energy with big mountains still to come.
Looked like it was a very worn out blackboard, that, but I think it said 2 minutes 23 seconds to the peloton here. That's the gap, so the driving is having an effect. They are closing the gap just that little bit. Right, pens and papers ready. I wanted to have a look what's coming up on screen next. Here it is. Who is the youngest winner of the Giro d'Italia? This is the Captain Morgan trivia quiz, and we'll give you the answer when we get back. We're looking here at the Inter Giro. It's happened moments ago, and little Freddy Gonzalez is turning out to be quite a sprinter as he goes over the line. But watch this now. This is the pack behind. A teammate of Di Biase having to put on his brakes to allow Di Biase across the line before him to get the 3rd place time bonus, and that might give him the lead in the Inter Giro.
That was pretty impressive. The difference between those 2 riders in the Inter Giro overall classification was 6 seconds at the start of the day, but that really was quite remarkable. But the Inter Giro is always a very dangerous place, and in fact, a few moments ago there was a crash. This is Sergei Lelekin, the Russian rider here on the Tenax team, and Bob, a lot of guys taking risks. I think because of the heat and the speed that we're going at right now, 1 or 2 riders under pressure.
Yes, absolutely, and the cobbles that they were springing across get very slick. That was an interesting sprint. The teammate of Di Biase slamming on the brakes. I'm not sure if he actually got slowed down enough. Here's a replay of the crash. that car on the right side of your screen there, making the road twice as narrow as it already is so narrow. So a touch of the handlebars there, and then down went the 10X rider. These are 2 liters still, and it's just a very odd sprint. You see all kinds of craziness on the road. And he had to look behind him to make sure while he was braking, no one was coming up fast enough that would crash into the back of him. You don't see that often, but that was a good one. I like that.
25 to go in the distance there, as the 2 boys are still clear by just that 30 seconds. Well, we haven't had the official result yet from that sprint, and it could be that his teammate didn't put his brakes on quick enough. He was desperately close to crossing that line involuntarily, and Nasdux, I think, went over in 4th place. So that competition is becoming quite a competitive one. The clock is counting on the 25 kilometres to go banner now, as these 2 boys know that the end is nigh, I think.
Well, it's come down very dramatically to about 30 seconds. We're getting a time check there on the 25 kilometre to go banner. Last time we got a check, it was 30 seconds. That was at the Giro. They may well have slowed down somewhat after that, as everyone tries to organise themselves. And the front end of the main field here, it's in fact Julian Wynne, the British national champion, and not far away from him, the Norwegian national champion, Arvidsson. The big names now making a lot of more interest on the front end of the main field. Alessandro Patacchi, I think, has enjoyed the first week of this Giro d'Italia. I don't think he could have even dreamed that he was going to wear the jersey for this many days.
I think that is absolutely right, and he's not going to give any presents away to Cipollini at the finish either, because if he loses the pink, as he will, because he's not going to climb the mountains quite so well, I don't believe, then he will want to concentrate on the Ciclamino jersey, and therefore he will need consistent finishes on these stages. So I don't think there'll be any presents for Mario Cipollini. I think that the only present they gave him was up on the mountain. They didn't attack.
Here's the Alessio rider coming back to get all the water bottles needed for the whole team for the rest of the stage today. This Christian Morini, very hot stage. I think he has 6 bottles in his jersey right now. That might be a new record for the Giro d'Italia.
Well, it's the last chance, of course, because we're heading to the final 20 kilometres.
That's a great effort on part of the team for Christian Morini. He'll be able to go up through the peloton now, ask for permission to pass by, as the riders are very close to each curb, and hand out the bottles. And let's see what Angelo Furlan can do. Baldado as well, a great sprinter on that team. He's already been given a stage, even though he wasn't first across the line. But he's a very handy lead-out man when he needs to be, and Angelo Furlan, I'm sure, would like to mix it in with the big boys today.
Looking for a different venue here to try and see the Giro d'Italia going by, and people will take all kinds of risks, won't they, Bob, to get a ringside seat. These 2 riders for the moment, Phil, I think, are prolonging the agony, because their advantage is just hovering on the 30-second mark right now, and you can see after a long 60-kilometre escapade they are starting to slow down. They're showing signs of weakness. They can see the top half of their body starting to nod around just a little bit, indicating that they haven't got all the power that they had when they started this breakaway, and very shortly they'll be back in the main field, and I think we'll be looking at a rip-roaring finish today. And Robbie McEwen, to me, seems to be the sprinter on form, and I've been amazed over the last couple of days the huge gear that Robbie McEwen has been using in those sprints as we come up towards the end.
Robbie always amazes me because he's such a little chap, and yet he's got magnificent strength in that body, as we've now seen. We've scored him at 98 wins in his career, and he's 2 away now from the magical 100 as a pro, and he could well get those in the next few days of this race. He's told us he's going to leave the race on stage 13 and then concentrate on his build-up for the Tour de France. He did a similar thing in the Giro last year. I think it was stage 10 when he pulled out last year, but he'd already won 2 stages. Well, he's won 2 stages this year, but of course he was declassed from 1. There's the result of the Giro, and they've given it to Di Biase, and I think that might give him the lead in that competition, because he was 4 seconds off. It's a time bonus competition, that one, quite complex, but I think the 3rd place will give him the lead in that competition over Nasdux, who are, I believe, crossed the line in 4th place.
I think he might have crossed the line in 5th, because that teammate of Di Biase there, Phil, was locking it up.
Yeah,
and Di Biase,
right.
I would have thought, was just in a photo finish for 3rd place. So if Nasdux went across the line in 5th, then almost certainly the lead will go to Moreno Di Biase. Mario Cipollini, though, doesn't worry about any of these smaller competitions at the moment. What he's worried about is trying to write his name into the record books. He's running out of occasions to do so, and a lot of people think if he doesn't do it quite quickly, he may well walk away from the Giro d'Italia, because Mario certainly likes to be at the top of the wave, doesn't he, Bob, rather than in the crest.
Well, he has a very hard time in dealing with defeat. He always has throughout his career. He's never finished a Tour de France because he just does not want to suffer in anonymity throughout the mountains, and could never quite get to Paris to sprint there. A couple of dreams unfolding in this bike race. Cipollini wants to win a stage of the Giro d'Italia wearing the rainbow stripes, but Pataki wants to win a stage desperately in the pink jersey. So I think we're going to see a real battle of the sprinters today.
Well, the crowd here on the island of Sicily, watching, mesmerised, probably a better word, as the main peloton in the Giro d'Italia goes through, heading towards the 20 kilometres to go banner now. They've had a good day out here. The big mountain that many of them feared was a little bit of a damp squib because nobody attacked all the way up until the last 50 metres, and Freddy Gonzalez won that. So they're settling down now for a sprint finish, but they've still got to wipe out those two leaders who are just dangling now off the front. The only good thing is no long straight roads here, so they won't be regularly spotted by the peloton.
Bit of disorganisation now. I think they're just slowing down, aren't they, Bob, for the next 4 or 5 kilometres before the big teams get the line sorted out on the front end of the peloton, taking us up to speeds of 50, 55 kilometres an hour, just inside of 40 miles an hour. It's a beautiful day off the coast of Sicily if you want to go sailing, and this brings back shades of the Louis Vuitton Cup, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. One of the boat races we covered recently on the Outdoor Life Network. I think one rider from the United States would love a finish like this is Tony Cruz, the U.S. Postal Service team, not in the Giro d'Italia, but congratulations out on Tony Cruz. He's just had a new baby, and so all of our compliments to the Cruz family back in the States. And he would love a sprint like that. He's a very fast rider, but Postal not here, preferring instead to use some of the smaller French stage races to get ready for the Tour de France, and not using the Giro d'Italia. They haven't raced it for quite some time, and I'm not sure that they ever will, because Lance prefers to go to the Dauphiné Libre in France to get ready for the Tour de France. Lance Armstrong, 4 times winner.
Well, while we're talking there a little bit, Bob, about, let's just have a look at, this is how the crash happened a few moments ago, just before we went through to the Intergiro point, and it looks again as if it may well have been caused by a bottle. A rider there just throwing his bottle into the wall. In fact, it wasn't the bottle that caused the crash, it was the cars on the right-hand side narrowed it down, and it's amazing, it always amazes me, Bob, how one guy can fall off in a bunch of 165 and nobody else goes into him.
It's quite remarkable. It's amazing, really, the instantaneous reactions that riders have to a man going down, to be able to get around and not crash themselves. I've seen the craziest things in my career as a bike racer. Has been unbelievable bike handling skills in the peloton.
Well, oh dear, I was just telling you about there were no long straight roads, and there we have a rather nasty one straight down there. This looks like the arm of Geert Stegmans. No, it is another rider who's fallen off today. The gap down to 36 seconds. So they're holding on, if anything, nibbling away just a little bit. This is the rider we saw fall a little bit earlier, but at least he's got back into the bunch, and so good for him. So as the field continues in pursuit, we'll take a break. And welcome back as we look here, for the moment at least, a little bit of an attack coming from Pietro Poli, the Italian on the Tenax team. It was his teammate Lelikin who had crashed earlier. But they're still trying to work out how they can pin back the two riders out front, Freddy Gonzalez, Ignacio Gutierrez. But they're working on it, and they're about 18 kilometres or so from the finish. So as we look down on the peloton, chance to remind you, we're in the chat room tonight between 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern Time. That's me, Phil Liggett, Paul Sherwen and Bob Roll. Come on board, olntv.com, and we can talk about things cycling. And I hope plenty of you will come and see us in the chat room between 7 and 8 p.m. Eastern Time tonight. Looking down on the field, there's the two leaders. Here comes at least a little bit of a reinforcement, and that'll put 3 of them dangling now just in front of the peloton.
Well, Pietro Poli here has done a very good move to get across, but the distance between these breakaways and the main field right now is being reduced all of the time, because the front end of the peloton is completely controlled by the teams of the sprinters, as we now have a 3-man leading group, Bob, with still not very much more than about 20 seconds over the main field. I think today is an ideal finish for Mario Cipollini, but can his team get it together after all the ruckus that's gone on? I did hear that, in fact, Giovanni Lombardi, having not spoken to Mario Cipollini since Ghent-Wevelgem, has dusted it all up, and they're actually the best of friends again.
Well, that's good news, because they're going to need a huge team lead out that he's depended on so much in the past. and doesn't seem to be on the great form that we've seen in the last couple of Giro d'Italias, so he'll really need a concerted team effort, especially from his last man before they get to the line, Giovanni Lombardi. Lombardi decided yesterday not to go back and help Mario back into the peloton. He decided to contest the sprint himself. Let's not forget he won a Giro stage last year. He's a very handy sprinter himself. He only could wind up 4th in the sprint, so I'm sure he'll be dedicated to the last man before Cipollini swings towards the finish line. We'll have a few rolling hills before we get into Catania, but then it is dead flat down by the coast, and it's a straight, flat run into the finish, just exactly what Cipollini enjoys most and is best at, accelerating, continuing his tempo all the way to the line, to the point where he's going so fast it's hard for any of the other sprinters to come around.
Well, I think we'll probably see one of our fastest finishes today, Phil, because in fact in the last 1.2 kilometers there is only one small left-hand sweeping bend which shouldn't slow the riders down at all, and then the road basically continues in a fairly straight line up to the finish, and that's the sort of finish that Mario Cipollini does like, but he does need and he does rely on the team getting themselves a good organisation for him.
Well, I think the peloton feel as though they've got this race under control. It's been a break of more than 60 kilometres now for the original 2 breakaways, Gonzalez and Gutierrez. Pietropoli has joined them, but he was really gasping for air when he got there, and he's going to have to need a couple of kilometres to recover from that effort, and he might not have that length of time before the peloton react. They're around about 16 kilometres from the finish.
Marco Pantani moving forward. I think he's decided to change his tactics now, Bob, hasn't he? We've seen him in the past being an absolutely superb climber. He's won the Giro, he's won the Tour de France, but over the last couple of days he's been riding at the front in the bunch sprints. Any insight in that?
It's amazing to see him up there in the top 10 in a bunch sprint. Usually the speed goes out of the legs the more you rise, and it seems to have the opposite effect on Pantani. If he can have some of that speed in the mountains, though, it would just be an amazing story if he came to back up to the highest level of cycling and was competitive in the mountains of this Giro d'Italia. I'd have to eat my hat because I said it would never happen.
For that reason, I'm really hoping that Marco Pantani comes back on you, Paul.
No, Bob's got a pretty nice hat, and I don't really think I want to see him eat it. Anyway, the main field have, I think, got this completely under control right now. They're just waiting for the moment when they can pounce, and they'll leave it down to the last moment, because it's a strange situation. When you have a break off the front of a bike race like this and you're chasing them down, it actually has the effect of nullifying all of the counter-attacks. These guys, the 2 men who have led this race for over 60 kilometres, there you can see Gutierrez and Freddy Gonzalez getting a little bit of reinforcement, but it's really coming just a bit too late.
Nice little gentle climb here. It's not completely fat by any means. We go up to around about 161 metres, then we drop down steadily and kick up just to the finishing line in Catania. We finish in the Piazza Nettuno, all ready and waiting for what should be a hurly-burly crossing of swords, with all of the sprinters trying for the last desperate win before we get down to the day off tomorrow. There we are, 15 kilometres to go, and they've been out front now since 80 kilometres to go, 2 of them at least.
Well, this shouldn't take them very much more than 20 minutes because we're cruising along right now at a very nice average speed of approximately 45 kilometres an hour. That's 28 miles an hour. It is undulating. We're rushing along the coast for the moment, but I would think as we get closer to the finish, Bob, we're going to nudge up that average speed to 50 and then 55 kilometres an hour, and it is having an effect on that advantage because it's now down to just 11 seconds. It's Petaki's team on the front. They had said over the last couple of days they didn't want to defend the lead of Alessandro Petacchi because they feel that they've got 2 men who can win this bike race overall in Dario Frigo and Gonzalez. The reason they don't want to work too hard is they don't want to use all of their energy in the first week of a 3-week bike race.
Yes, absolutely. The 2 climbers will need all of the teammates if they get the mountains, the lead of the bike race in the mountains, either Gonzalez or Frigo. Frigo putting in a huge effort himself yesterday in the finale of the bike race, trying to defend the lead of Alessandro Petacchi. He came through with a good sprint himself and has kept that jersey. It's a great result for the Fassa Bortolo team, who haven't had good Grand Tour results so far, and Giancarlo Ferretti, the team manager of that squad, telling his riders they had better wake up and get some results in this Giro d'Italia.
So as the race with the C on the left, it looks like Fassa Bortolo trying to take Petacchi to the line for another top 3 finish. He's been showing us he's pretty good at that, a stage win. He's had a second, he's had a third in the stages we've seen already. He's also the rifle holder of the Ciclamino jersey, which today is on the shoulders of yesterday's winner, Robbie McEwen. So watch out for that rider in the sprint. We'll take a break and we'll see you in a moment. On the Giro d'Italia, the 3 leaders were caught. This is the catch about 30 seconds ago. In fact, the peloton sweeping up the 3 escapers, and so we are now all together approximately 12 kilometers from the finish. Now it is a chance for the sprinters to take control of the race. As we now are back with the live pictures here, and everybody now, look at them scurrying to get to the front. They're all smelling blood.
Scott Sunderland at the back here. He seems pretty happy with the way the Giro d'Italia is going for him right now, and he's I think trying to explain that the action here is all at the front end of the main field. Scott, the Aussie, is 77th in the overall classification right now, but certainly the action is at the front end of the peloton. I think no one will steal the glory away from the sprinters this afternoon, as we get a magnificent glimpse here of the area where we are charging into here in Sicily, Catania, where most of these riders will be looking forward to getting onto a plane in a few hours' time. 10 kilometers to go right now. That shouldn't really take them very much more than about 13 minutes.
And going quickly back to Scott Sunderland, I saw him win his first bike race as a professional here on the island of Sicily, and from a little breakaway, that was a great result. He was riding for the Dutch team there, and the guy I used to race with, Guido van Kalster, was the team manager. It was his first day in the car, and Scott Sunderland won the race, so a lot of celebrating there, and I'm sure he has good memories of racing here in Sicily.
Scott's enjoying his cycling in his twilight years, there's no doubt about that. He came back from very serious injury in the last 2 years, had a very nasty crash approaching the finish in a town called Victor Harbour in South Australia, where he was brought down in the sprint finish. So he's going to keep his nose out of that today, I'm sure. He's happy to ride to the finish. He's not the big bunch sprinter that he was, so he's sitting at the back watching the affairs. Again, we're being troubled a little bit. Our satellites behaved itself brilliantly all day, but it's gone off just a little bit there. We're back again as the team of Mario Cipollini begin to push up on the outside of the herd, and Cipollini, I'm sure, looking to latch onto the tail. Pataki, though, wants the stage win. McEwen wants to notch another one, that's for sure. And there are only 3 of the men who could intrude today, because this, I think, probably for the first time, is going to be a real bunch sprint.
It's going to be a real bunch sprint, and that was a real serious speed we saw coming from the motorbike just a few moments ago. 90 kilometers an hour, which translates to 55 miles an hour. So if you're at the back of the main field right now, there's absolutely no chance of moving to the front. That's the amazing thing, isn't it, Bob? In a bike race, when you're charging into town, you just cannot move up at speeds like this. You just have to stay where you are.
Yes, I think the riders must be picking up a pretty strong tailwind now coming down from the north as they go. They have the Mediterranean Sea over on their left-hand shoulder, and they are really flying down the road. Any crash now would have some serious repercussions. So you see all of the GC riders in a panic to get their teammates in front of them so they don't have any trouble at all staying at the back of the pack. That is the last place you want to be. This is another little window in how hard it is to win a 3-week bike tour. Everyone racing to stay in the front of the bike races. You can see how narrow these roads are. Only a few riders can do that, especially in the midst of a big team lead out being done by 3 teams, Lotto, Domina Vacanze, as well as the Fassa Bortolo team of our current leader and very fast sprinter, Alessandro Pataki. 8 kilometers now to the finish line. It's going to be pretty burly, and let's hope that everyone can stay out of trouble.
Well, it's still a bit disorganised, Phil, for the moment. Nobody really taking complete control on their own. This is Lotto Domo on the front, shadowed there by the Française de Gers looking out for Jimmy Casper, and still Mario Cipollini's team leaving it down to the last few kilometres. I would say we'll see them moving forward once we get to the banner indicating 5 kilometres to go. That means about a 7-minute effort for the men in the zebra stripes.
Oh, we're looking at the Lotto boys, no, Alessio boys. Maybe Angelo Furlan is feeling a little bit friskier, more than he was yesterday when he was dropped on the climbs. But as they head down towards the finish now, this is going to be a very rapid finish today. As Bob has said, they're picking up the tailwind. They're running off the